Here to talk about our celebrating Hindu heritage. As you are aware all that in the US, we have been celebrating this month as Hindu Heritage Month. And we have an outstanding panel to talk about our Hindu heritage from different perspectives. My name is Kumar, and I am the president and trustee of Indica USA. With me, I have National Coordinator Ram Sundar. Hello, Ram.
Hi, this is Ram here. Nice meeting you people.
And I also have Nishant Limbachia, also another National Coordinator.
Hi, Namaste, Nishant. Everyone. Namaste.
But before, as like I said, we have an outstanding panel here to talk about our Hindu heritage, and we'll have some discussion. Given, if time permitting, we'll have some question and answer from the audience. Please use our Q&A box, not the chat box, to put your questions you have. And if you have any specific questions for a specific panelist, please mention that also in the post, and we'll try to answer, put those questions to panelists and get an answer for you as much as possible. But before we do that, as we always do, we start with a prayer. And for that, I hand it over to Nishant Bhai.
Namaste, everyone. So with Diwali approaching, or Deepavali approaching, I'll start with a prayer and then actually two prayers. So I'll start with the first one. Shubham karoti kalyanam arogyam dhana sampada Shatru buddhi vinashaya Deepaji namostute. And then the other one is Sri Ram coming back from Ayodhya. This is Deepavali, so I'll just do a Ram Stuti. Ramaya, Ramabhadraya, Ramachandraya Vedase, Raghunathaya, Nathaya, Sitaya, Pataye Namaha. Thank you, Bhai. Bhai. Over to you.
Thank you, Nishant Bhai, for a wonderful prayer. And now, I will quickly introduce some our panelists. First off, Nesergy. Nesergy Jaiswal is the General Secretary of the Hindu Students Council. She and her team strive Hindu students in uplifting them, providing them a safe space to practice their culture and religion and learn more about Hinduism. Nyseri is also a member of the youth wing of Sanskrita Bharati, and in the past, she has taught Hindu Dharma classes to K-12 students in an effort to re-invoke Hindu values and spread knowledge of Hindu scriptures and practices. She is studying at Texas State for Masters in Public Administration. Welcome to our webinar, Nesergy. I think this is your first time on our platform, so another special warm welcome to you.
Yes, namaste, Avatanji. Thank you for having me.
Next up, we have Deepaji, Deepa Salem. Deepa Salem is a serious sadhaka of Hindu Dharma and especially Advaita Vedanta, and a storyteller based on Itihasa Puranas. She also writes and speaks on Hindu topics with parents and runs workshops for Hindu students. She has an MBA from Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management and has been a marketer and management consultant. Currently, she leads research, technology, media business. She is a mother of 3 children. Deepaji, we have had you before, but still, again, warm welcome to you. Welcome to our show again.
Always a pleasure to be here with this wonderful team and a great set of panelists as well. Thank you for having me.
Okay. And last but not the least, we have Aditi Banerjee. Aditi's first novel, The Curse of Gandhari, a successful bestseller, was published by Bloomsbury in India in September 2019. Her second novel, Shiva and Sati, has been slated for publication in 2022, also by Bloomsbury, India. Aditi is a practicing attorney at a Fortune 500 financial services company in the US and has also completed executive MBA at Columbia University. She earned Juris Doctor from Yale Law School and received a BA in International Relations, magna cum laude from Tufts University. She's a prolific writer and speaker about Hinduism and Hindu American experience. She's a member of Indic Academy and Indic Book Club, which sponsored a successful 6-city book launch tour for The Curse of Gandhari in September 2019 across India. She co-edited the book Invading the Sacred, an analysis of Hinduism studies in America in collaboration with Rajiv Malhotraji, and has authored several essays and in publications such as Columbia Documentary History of Religion in America since 1945 and Buddhist, Hindus, and Sikhs in America, a short history, Religion in American Life, Oxford University. Her articles have also been published in Outlook India and many other publications. In her free time, she enjoys wandering the Himalayas, cooking with the latest kitchen gadgets, hunting for the perfect cup of coffee, and reading about history and world literature. And I take this opportunity, and I hope Aditi won't mind. She will, we will have to come to your place some cooking. We see all the pictures all the time on Facebook and other social media platforms. So with that, welcome Aditi to our platform. You are one of us here, so welcome.
Namaste, thank you, and you're welcome over for dinner anytime.
Yes, and Aditi is also a local Naperville, just like the rest of us, except Nesergy. We are all from Chicago area here in the US. Okay, so I think I'll start off with Nesergy. Nesergy, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking Nesergy these questions is because she has been directly involved. She and her organization, the Hindu Student Council, has been directly involved in this Hindu heritage events. So what I would like to ask you, Nesergy, is what would you say has been the impact of Hindu Heritage Month on Hindu youth in the US?
So Hindu Heritage Month, which took place during the month of October, it really has made some great accomplishments for Hindus. Around 20 states and 42 cities in the US have issued proclamations officially recognizing Hindu Heritage Month. And this is important to note because from the standpoint of a Hindu American and having a month officially dedicated to just celebrating being Hindu is something for me and other Hindu youth to be very proud of. There have been instances where I myself have had to balance this Hindu part of my life with also being an American, and in an effort to maybe blend in with the crowd or not wanting to explain the unique practices in our culture, or just prevent oneself from being mocked for being different. Many Hindu American youth face this battle of suppressing their Hindu heritage and culture, or kind of being a closeted Hindu and living this dual life. But this month, as seen in the American values of embracing diversity and the different cultures and people that live in this country, it's all about trumpeting during the Hindu Heritage Month, the different cultures and people that make us all Hindu, and the amazing contributions that we have made in sciences and liberal arts, medicine, and spirituality. This month is really invigorating that Hindu identity within the youth, and bringing to light the endless accomplishments of our heritage that we can be proud of.
Wonderful, thank you, Nesergy. Now I hand it over to Nishant Bhai.
So we've heard a good perspective from Nesergy. What I wanted to ask Deepaji is, yes, this, we have this Hindu Heritage Month announced and there's proclamations out there. What is the ground situation? I mean, what is really the parents or as a parent, for example, what is the difference? I mean, we all know with Diwali. And so what is this, dare I say, the big deal, right? About, for the parents at least. So what would you say on that?
Thank you. Very good question. See, one of the fundamental things we learn is if we don't learn to respect ourselves, how can we ask other people to respect us? Right. There needs to be, I think, what we need to, as a community is, first we need to own up to being a Hindu. And that is not in any way going against the culture, going against the country, or going against other people. It's purely owning up your culture and establishing your self-respect as a Hindu, after which only we can expect us to be respected outside, right? So that actually, it's a very fundamental notion. And personally, I believe that starts at home. It starts very early in your childhood, where, we are taught about the fundamentals of dharma. I mean, unfortunately, we are forced to use the word Hinduism, but what we mean is the, Sanatana Dharma, and the notion of the value of Sanatana Dharma, how it contributes to your own harmony, as well as harmony in the society, harmony in the family, and frankly, harmony in the entire universe, right? Because dharma literally means how you live a life along with every creature, not even humans, but every creature out there. And the notion of diversity, for example, that we allow so many paths to the divine, so many ways of conceptualizing the divine. All of this and the practices that help us, right, with our mental peace, overcoming the odds of life, there needs to be a recognition of the value that dharma brings for our own life very early on, and kind of develop that as they grow, and the children will develop with a stronger sense of not just identity, but really a sense of pride in being a Hindu, right? So I think this is a very important notion this month, where we actually should take stock. Are we really exuding that self-respect? Are we really showing ourselves as proud Hindus that we deserve to have a space in the narrative? We deserve to have a kind of a respect in the way that we are treated. I think it's a very this should not be needed. Frankly, we shouldn't be needing a Hindu Heritage Month. But because of the scenario, it's wonderful that the organizations like Nyseri mentioned, definitely the Hindu Students Council. It's good that we are doing this. I think it gives a recognition to not just Hindus, but also others that we matter, right?
So just a quick follow-up question after this. I mean, you have been a storyteller, educator. I know you're running some workshops for teens and all that. So what are some of the things that parents can do, or let's say some people, they have probably not celebrated Diwali as they should in traditionally. So how can they start? Is there a place they can start, easily, or in, let's say, I should say, baby steps, and then go from there, and at least instill those sanskaras to children as to like carry forward this this festival, this utsav that we have.
Definitely, yeah. So when we grew up, we didn't have to teach we didn't have to be taught anything. We just absorbed it, right? Just by being part of the Indian, milieu, we saw how things were celebrated. We saw the Shraddha across, and we also saw the different ways that people celebrated. There was no one standard way to do a Deepavali, for example.
Right.
We grew naturally, but I think we have two situations now. One is definitely we are in a different country, in a different culture. And secondly, we also have a generation that's a little more explorative. You can't just tell them to do something, and they do. As they grow older, they do have questions that have to be addressed. We do have to have honest conversations about our culture, why we do what we do. What does that require? It requires parents to be a lot more educated than that we are, right? So it requires it puts a lot of onus on us to kind of learn about it ourselves, and then be able to have those conversations very early on, and do it in an age appropriate fashion, right? So you can't do what, obviously in the early stages, it's more fun and, Deepavali is fun and here's the story of Rama and here's how we do it, decorate diyas. And I've been seeing some wonderful work online, people doing excellent work. They are telling stories, they are acting out stories, they are making cute little diyas and gifting it, to later on having larger conversations. So I try to have conversations with my children about, like, look at the life of Rama. It's Sri Rama embodies so many things. There are so many lessons to be taken from his life. So you kind of progress age appropriately. We have so much fun, right? So Hinduism is not just about lesson. It's lesson plus fun plus a whole lot of art and culture. But I think that's where it starts, to make it fun, but also make it very intellectual. I think that our children are capable of it. The camp that you mentioned, the workshop that I just finished this morning, the questions are very deep. These children want to know, and they are open about learning as well. So they deserve to be told, had discussions with, and explore it together with them.
I would love to be a fly on that wall when that session is happening. I suppose you can do it for the elders too.
I've had some requests about it. So yeah, maybe it is required. I mean, I'm a learner too. It's not like I have all the answers, but the discussion itself is very, very important and very eye-opening.
If I may take the next question, I think I would like to go to Aditi. So this is the question that it kind of nags me a little bit. So Aditi, so we have this notion of, or we have this idea that, the heritage, so it's always kind of old, right? So the Hindu Heritage Month, right? So it is something that is an old structure that needs to be preserved somehow, architecturally, and, but that's really is not my understanding. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
Yes. So heritage, if you think about heritage, you have like a heritage hotel, which is like a hotel from hundreds of years ago, or a heritage monument, or something very ancient. It's very static. It's passive. It's something we receive. And of course, a lot of that is true because we have such an ancient tradition. But really, Sanatana Dharma, it's a living tradition, and it's a tradition of transmission. So you transmit generation to generation, guru to shishya, parent to child, and that's how it's lived and sustained itself. It's also very adaptive, meaning it, depending on time, place, circumstance, it adapts differently. So Hinduism, as it's practiced in Bali or in other places, is different. It changes over time, but it still has the substantively, it's still the same. So I think one thing we have to ask ourselves is not just what can we take from what our ancestors did and what was in our ancient past, but how do we add to it and how do we pass it on to the future? And in that sense, I think like one framework of which I think about it is, what does it mean to be Hindu? And a lot of times we don't even ask ourselves this, or a lot of times this Hindu identity itself isn't there. So most of us who are born in this country, in the US, we were born of Indian immigrants. So we start with this idea we're Indian American, which is fine. And for like my brother and me, we used to go to India a lot. So we had that familiarity, but now like my brother has his children, they're going to feel less of a link to India than we did or our parents did, but that doesn't make them any less Hindu. So we have to go to first principles and what does it mean to be Hindu? And one framework that I think is very helpful is this concept of the Pancha Mahayagya. So this is this Vedic concept that every day, like every single day, every human being has 5, yagya can be sacrifice or offering. And you think of it as these karmic debts that you have. That you have to find a way to honor. So there's one for the devas, which is the gods, and that can be puja, it can be bhakti, it can be all of those practices. That's sadhana, and sadhana and part of your nitya karma, that should always be there. Everyone should have a practice of cultivation, whether it's 15 minutes or an hour a day, and that should be a discipline that's inculcated. Then you have Rishi Yagya. So Rishi, you think about our Rishis and Acharyas. So all of the knowledge, the wisdom, the Itihasa and the Puranas, all of that wealth of knowledge, honoring that. So I think of that as honoring knowledge, Adhyatma and Vedanta, or whatever you want to, whatever appeals to you, honoring that. Then there's Pitra Yagya, which is for your ancestors. And this is something we've neglected a lot. But ancestor worship, or honoring the ancestors, was a fundamental part of every ancient culture. And nowadays we've forgotten those subtle linkages that we have to our ancestors and our forefathers, and when our parents pass away, our grandparents pass away. And that's a big problem. So even just learning about your own family history, learning about what your grandparents did, your family traditions, your Kula Deva, things like that, learning that history and connecting to that is very important. Then there's Manushya Yagya, which is, the human beings around you. So again, that the sense of seva or serving and having compassion, that's very fundamental to us. We don't think of it as charity. We don't think of it as something like, you're giving to someone, but it's seva, it's, Nara seva is Narayan seva. So that idea of service is very important. And then finally, there's Bhuta Yagya, which is all sentient beings, all life forms, not even humans, but it can even be like the insects. So there used to be a practice that before taking any food, the woman of the house would leave some food outside. For the ants, and then if there were any poor people around there, they would always be offered the food first before anyone in the house would eat themselves. So if every day we think about these are the the dharma, the values and principles of dharma, and if every day we think of this, then we start kind of living that Hindu experience. So
I remember this was probably 30 years ago, where I used 40 years ago, when my mother would say, we have made some roti and just go give it to a cow outside. So the cows would know, obviously, right, to when to come a certain house. So they would be standing there. You just go and feed them and come back. You don't really understand as a kid, what is this going on? Like, why is the cow does need to eat, when we're not eating yet? But that kind of instills, what Deepaji was saying, that samskar that are instilled at a young age, take you a long way in life. So
on the similar line, I also have a story that we never had a pet growing up in India, in my family, and we were scared of dogs, like most Indians are, because of the stray dogs. But dog who would come every night from nowhere and come after we were all eaten, and will stay the rest of the night at our place, and we'll give that dog a roti. Every day we will save a roti or two for the dog. His name was Sheru. We called him Sheru. And in the morning before we were up, he would be gone. And the other thing was, he never took, and we never gave tea, juta khana. So there will be one made separately for him by my nani, first my nani, and then my mom would do that. So these are some of the subtleties that you don't understand. Even though we didn't have dogs, and I was scared of dog, we always had the respect for that dog.
Can I just add one thing there?
Sure.
What you said is so interesting, that this idea of having pets wasn't really there. So nowadays, like here, there's like a big craze for pets, but a lot of it becomes like moha. Like excessive emotional attachment, like treating them like babies. And in our worldview, that's not really how you think of them. So you should always feed and care for them. But there's a story of Bharat and the deer. He became so attached to the deer that he had to he had to be born again and get reincarnated. So these subtleties and nuances are very, very fascinating.
Absolutely. And PETA would not understand these kind of stuff. I will make a pivot here, and I'll come back. I'm coming back to Nesergy. Nesergy, my question is that, you are involved on campus. And one of the things that we always talk about is that, Hinduism will survive only when we have Hindus. if there is no followers of a dharma or a religion or a whatever, that will not survive. We need living people to follow dharma. In that sense, we are feeling the pressure from all directions, whether we talk about Bangladesh right now, as what has happened over there in Kashmir, and even some of our traditions, Sabrimala and other things, we are always feeling pressure about it. How has your specific organization, let's say Hindu Student Council, and you as well, have dealt with some of the situations on campus? We have also felt a lot of pressure from academia. We are still dealing with it today or yesterday. One of the professors from Rutgers University came up with some fascinating, to put it mildly, I don't want to do too much negative things here, but some of the fascinating tweets. So how have you dealt with some of those things?
I think, for one, it's what you've all already mentioned so far, is about continuing that Hindu experience, that those lived experience of Hindus students on campus. And Hindu Students Council does, our mission is really to support these students on campus, making sure that they have room to grow and a safe place to practice and continue their culture. So that in itself is a way that we kind of combat the negativity by encouraging the positivity and the culture of Hinduism, and really supporting these students to wear their heritage with pride. And then, of course, there are things, negativities, like you mentioned, with certain, academia and the professors, and we're seeing situations in different countries right now in which Hindus are oppressed. And in order to combat this, I think the youth are doing, and along with other community members, are really doing a good job and using the power of their voice. We always try to promote those values of Hinduism, such as Dharmo Rakshati Rakshitaha or Vasudeva Kutumbakam, in which it encourages the youth to realize that they should fight for what is wrong, and at the same time realize that despite the different backgrounds that all Hindus are coming from, the different sampradayas or countries, that we're all still one big family, that we need to support and protect each other as well. So the students taking on these values have been using, like I said, the power of their voice, the protest, social media campaigns on campuses to bring light to these situations of Hinduphobia and Hindu persecution. Of course, Hindu Heritage Month is about celebrating all the fun things and the amazing things to learn about in Hinduism, but at the same time, it's also about making sure that every human has the basic right to their own beliefs and practices. And in that, we're focusing on these issues that Hindus are facing, and really using the power of our voice on campus and spreading the word about making sure that all Hindus are able to celebrate, being in Hindu.
Ram, do you have a question? You're mute.
Yes, yeah. I'd like to ask a question for Deepa. I've been following all your Facebook posts. Very interesting stuff. Right now, as far as the Heritage Month is concerned, we are coming towards the end of this month now, right? So what would be a key takeaway for the youth, actually? What do you think we should pass on to the youth so that they can take something away from this Heritage Month that we are supposedly celebrating for the first time?
Yes. Yeah, very, very important occasion, as I mentioned. So I can speak about my experience. So I launched this, Hindu workshop during this month, and there's been a huge demand. And the way I constructed, and obviously, nothing starts from, I've been following a whole lot of thinkers in this space. So all I have done is kind of summarized what I learned from them and passed it on to very busy children. So just finding a few hours with them is a challenge. So you had to construct a curriculum where, number one, it's interactive, and number two, it's short. But there are really two goals. So I had two sessions, and the first session was really all, positive, right? So what is dharma? How does it help humanity? How does it help an individual develop? How does it help a family achieve all the purusharthas of life? And then to indicate, somewhat how it is different from other, religions, not to again put them, it's a very fine path. We are not the kind of people who are going to put down other people, but only to the extent where, we draw out some of the uniqueness. For example, we had this plurality, we had a diversity of thought. There was no concept of blasphemy or heresy or anything like that in Hinduism. It is very, it can be customized by personality. Even, for example, what Aditi mentioned around Devagnya, Pitruyagnya, and so on, everybody doesn't, you have to do those 5 things definitely, but everybody doesn't do the exact same thing for each of them. You can customize it the way it appeals to you. So the kind of flexibility that it offers for every individual to grow. So I kind of, the first session is really about building a sense of knowledge, number one, awareness about what dharma offers, but also a sense of pride that, hey, maybe there is something good in this, maybe there is something good that I need to explore more, right? So that was the first part. And the second part was hard, but it was really addressing all of the, the first part was so positive, right? It was all about how is dharma helping. And then I also spent some time on ancient Hindu society, what it accomplished, none of us, forget about children, none of even adults know that India was the top GDP country in the world until 14th,
Right.
15th century.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody knows that. Between China, it's only in the 18th century that we started falling and we had a massive fall. Not many people know that, right? So I highlighted a lot of the scientific technology accomplishments, and the children themselves, I've given them a homework. So they came back with some, what they learned that they didn't know about, right? Fibonacci series and things like that. So the first one was positive, but the second one is what they keep hearing all the time. Whatever you say, it's cast. Whatever you talk about, it's, oh, women were, sati, there was sati in India. I mean, everything is negative, right? So the positives are completely sidelined or very little hinted upon, but the negatives are kept thrown at them wherever they go. So I went through a pretty intense exercise on walking them through what is originally in Hindu Dharma. The whole, like Gita and Upanishads are full of this, that every creature is God, every part of nature is God, right? Gita says there are multiple shlokas, samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram, right? Every part, and Vasudeva sarvamiti. So there is no concept of low and high. And then we started with that, but we also went through how did the situation change to where it got really bad. And now how do we get it back, right? So there are discussions we had around, obviously about women, how this whole issue of Sati and Jawahar gets mixed up, and, so very good discussions, and they were very engaged. So my point is about Hindu Heritage Month, again, goes back to, making people more aware of Hindu history is very important, because without it, you go in with, you have a very low self-esteem, right? As a community, because we keep hearing the negatives all the time, then we have a low self-esteem, and we're very defensive when somebody talks to us about Hinduism. There was some meme going around, which is very true. If you ask a Christian, what do you follow? They'll probably say, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim. If you ask a Hindu, they're like, oh, I'm kind of Hindu, but I don't really follow in it. I believe all religions are equal and all of that. Sounds very nice, but it makes you diminished. You know what I mean? Yeah. By saying you're a Hindu, you're not putting down anybody. You're just owning up your heritage. I think this is a great opportunity. And what I would suggest is, every family should have this discussion. Like I said, the children who came to the workshop are children who already had this some of these discussion at home. Their parents have exposed them to some of it, so they're more willing to come. It's very hard to bring in a child whose workshop was no exposure to it whatsoever. So it has to start at home, and then slowly the knowledge base has to be built. So I've been talking about 3 aspects, to 3 S's I call, and I've been talking about this several times. So I talk about
internet is have
sorry.
I think your internet was having some issue.
I think no, Deepaji was fine. I think yours stopped for a minute, for a few seconds.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So when talking about three S's, we can talk about it in detail later, but Swadhyaya, that's first, that is learning. Hinduism is a very intellectual religion. It's not like, here is something you believe and you follow. It wants, the whole structure is meant for you to really study, analyze this, Shravana Manana, as it's called in technical terms, is you need to have the study. So that's Swadhyaya. And the second is sadhana. As Aditi mentioned, this is a lifetime, pursuit. So there needs to be some amount of effort and some kind of sadhana, and it can be as simple as lighting a lamp and sitting in front of God to maybe an hour-long puja. It doesn't matter. It could be meditation. It could be, puja or whatever it is, whatever is possible. So the second one is sadhana, and the third one is sanghatana, which is participating in the public as a public Hindu. I see a lot of people, and even during the recent Dismantling Hindu Phobia conference, I wanted some help. And there are many people who are saying, yeah, I'm a Hindu, but I'm kind of a private Hindu. I don't really do anything outside. Well, that's fine. That's your choice. But then that's not being participative, right? Like, obviously we all have to give back to what we have taken. And that's also partly what Aditi was mentioning. So a Sanghatana, it could be any form and any capacity. There is no one rule. It could be going to and supporting a local temple. It could be being part of an organization, even like Indica or, any of the religious organizations, organizing something for the youth, anything in any way, a shape or form. It could be as simple as writing a check for something in India also. I'm not saying there is a certain way to do it. Everybody's lifestyle and, what they can do is different. But thinking about this, having a discipline for Swadhyaya, discipline for sadhana, and an approach for Sanghatana, these three things will make not just our lives more meaningful, but it will really contribute to society in a very significant ways. So I think that's where we start, Ram. And, it's very important. This month should be a reset for all of us. If you're not doing any of these three S's, we need to start doing it. If you're already doing it, we need to find better ways to do it. And that includes all of us, includes me as well.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that gives me a segue to quickly talk about Indica, that where we fit in all this. It's as you know, our motto is to promote, preserve, and protect, and that's where we come in with all these events and webinars, and we have lots of things going on. We started exchange club, and we have now such an expansive platforms totally devoted to Indic knowledge system, Indic traditions, and we do book launches, we promote books, we publish books, we give out grants for research, and we offer various aspects of Hindu Dharma, including, for example, you can train to be a priest. So things like that. So just, there was a quick plug-in for Indica. I don't know who else. The next question.
Let me make a quick comment, actually. I think it's probably a takeaway from my side too. For Deepavali, right? Especially in Chennai and southern parts of India, we used to get up at 3:30 in the morning and then celebrate Deepavali. It's not a nighttime Deepavali for us. In the south, it's actually early morning. That's one of the days in the entire 365 days, I would willingly wake up at 3:30 in the morning without an alarm clock. I would just wake up. And then the tradition is you go and, brush up and, freshen up, and you go light a cracker in the morning, so that you wake other people up, actually. That's what, you don't keep an alarm because crackers are your alarm. It just go up. My crackers, they were all, 1,000 walas and 2,000 walas. So I think as a key takeaway this time, I think I'm going to wake up early. I have not been doing it in the US. Typically, because our festivals are oriented towards weekends, right? We conveniently push our festivals to weekends, align it to some parties and all that stuff. But I think we should just bring it back to the day it's supposed to be celebrated. You can have a party on Saturday, Sunday, which is conveniently do that.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be my takeaway, Deepa. This Thursday, I'm going to wake up early. I do think I need an alarm. There are no crackers going around in my area here, so I'll probably do that. Just one thought, I will make that comment here.
Yeah, just to give you a quick anecdote, my son is 11, so he loves firecrackers. Okay, so even here we would go out somewhere in Indiana. He would go to the cracker shop and let's get something. So we have a bunch of firecrackers sitting in our garage, but some of them are like loud, so you can't really light them out. But so he was asking me, like, what do you do? And so in India, and what's the firecrackers? And I really want to go to India and celebrate it. I don't want to do it here. So I said, well, you pretty much light the crackers anytime you want. And see, he's so excited that he wants to go there and spend the entire night just lighting firecrackers. Like, I want to do it at midnight, starting from midnight to all the way in the morning. Because in Gujarat, what we have is the Diwali night. You put the firecrackers, and the next morning is what we call our New Year, the Gujarati New Year. So the firecrackers pretty much go entire night, all the way in the morning. So he really wants to do that. So I think I might have taken him some time, with the school schedule here and everything, it's difficult to get off during those time, but hopefully someday I'll be able to take him.
Okay, maybe I'll ask Aditi. As you know, Aditi, the Indic tradition, our dharmic tradition, is one of the last surviving indigenous tradition in the world, one of the oldest surviving tradition in the world. How do you reconcile with that in your professional life? And you have made up to a pretty high profile job. You are with Fortune 500 companies. You're a lawyer. I'm not going to ask you about any negative things that you may have your faith or anything, but how has it helped you in your professional life? The background you have from either your swadhyaya or through parents or whatever ways you have had.
Yep. So that's a really good question. One thing I'm going to say is, in some ways, I think it's easier to be Hindu in America than it is in India. So one thing that's really great about American society, American people, and you find this in companies too, is that there is truly an idealism when it comes to multiculturalism and diversity and pluralism. It's not just a platitude. There are people who really, believe in this and want to make it easier. So in corporate speak, what it's called is bringing your authentic selves to work. So what that means is, like, let's say I'm a vegetarian, but I don't want to make, if I'm going to a lunch meeting, I don't want to make people uncomfortable. So in the past, what a lot of people would do is, let's say you had like all like meat sandwiches, and then there was like a little bit of salad. What people would used to do is they would just have a little bit of salad, and they wouldn't say that they're vegetarian. And when I first joined the workforce, I was kind of like that. But then there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm a vegetarian, like I don't eat XYZ. And please, and people be happy to, if it's at the company cafeteria, they'll make accommodations. If you're at a restaurant, they'll make accommodations. But this goes back to, to Deepa's point, which is that you have to ask for these things. You have to have enough self-respect where you will ask for these things and explain, who you are. So I remember I had gone, it was like a networking trip where we went to Napa Valley. Napa Valley is, it's all wineries, and I don't drink alcohol. And I was really like thinking like, well, what is this just going to be really weird? Are people going to react to it negatively? It was like a small group of us, and you're meant to be like bonding, and the way everyone's bonding is they're drinking. And then I said, well, the thing is, I just don't don't drink, but I'm happy to, but at the same time, we can't like ghettoize ourselves and retreat from that. But also, as Deepa was saying, you have to be in the public life, you have to be out there. So I was just upfront about it. I said, I don't drink, but I'm happy to go out all these places and eat some crackers or whatever. And then there were some other people who said, I used to drink a lot, and then I went through a period of not drinking, and it actually ended up being a way of bonding with people, because when you're actually yourself, then people feel comfortable being open around you. So that's one part of it. Also, same thing with when there's like Shivratri and things like that. So I'm going to take the day off because I have to observe Shivratri. Then I just say I'm going to be at the temple all night, and so I'll be joining work a little bit late the next day. So these are things that we have to do, and there is a receptiveness in doing so. And then I think there's also kind of this idea that the people have that we need to be a good Hindu, like we almost have to be like a monk. Like one shouldn't try to be very successful in one's career or something like that, and you should just join an NGO or like go off, become a sadhu or something like that. But actually, in the Purushartha, like Artha is very much there. And so this understanding of, if you can be a leader, you can set a good example for others. So applying dharma in the workplace and being successful and how that can be like a really good thing for dharma is actually very important. So that's always been there. So we need to also recognize that. So how you can be successful, being Hindu and being dharmic, and not hiding that from the workplace. I've actually found, the other thing is like I wear a bindi, and my mother was very scared because when I graduated from law school, my first job was at a very, felt like a white shoe law firm. So a very like conservative, like prestigious like law firm. And I was gonna wear a bindi every day. And my mother said, well, people, they'll look at you where you're wearing a suit, but then you're also gonna be wearing a bindi. I said, no, it's important to me. I really don't think I've ever had a negative reaction to that. I think I've had people who come up to me and they've asked questions, but it's never been a negative thing. So much of it's just in our own heads. It's our own heads, or it's actually like our own people, but it's not really there. So it's actually, being different, it can feel like a bad thing, but it's actually like a really good thing, because in life, you don't want to be boring. You don't want to be the same as everyone else. And actually, the more unique you are, the more interesting you are. And so I think that's important. And then the last part you mentioned about being an indigenous tradition, in addition to thinking about what Hindu heritage means for us, we have to also think about this responsibility we have for Loka Sangraha and contributing to, to the world out there. And there's this perspective that's just being lost out there. So I'll give an example, as a writer. So I'm writing my current, book. It's about a girl who has visions of Krishna, and it's this like mystical relationship she develops with Krishna. But it's like set in contemporary times, and it's just a story. Now I have to assign it a genre, right? So people would say, oh, that's fantasy because it's something, like that doesn't really happen, or you can call it like magical realism or things like that. But that's actually not true. Like that's just part of our everyday experience. To me, this is realism. It's just like the same as any young adult, like fiction in that sense, but it's not fantasy. But there needs to be this voice that's out there that challenges these ideas that you have the physical world and everything that's not physical is just fantasy. That's a very Abrahamic way of looking at things. And that's not the way the vast majority of world cultures have actually looked at things. So when Hindus speak, we're not speaking just for ourselves, but also for all those traditions which have been decimated. And we have that responsibility, and we owe that to others. You shouldn't have just one way of looking at things. If you really believe in multiculturalism, then it's not just skin deep. It's not just having, like brown people saying and believing the same things that white people do. It's really having different worldviews, different values, and different principles, and having that mutual respect, but bringing in that plurality and diversity of thought. And that's something we owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to the world.
That's a very interesting point, Aditi. And I sorry if anybody else wanted to ask, but I want to jump in and ask another follow-up question on that. That you are an author, a very successful one at that, and you write in a language which is not native to the Indian culture. And then you are also writing, assuming, mostly for non-native, right? I mean, there are English speakers in India and Hindus, of course, but it's not very native, like, it's not a native language of India. I'm sure you run into issues in communicating the differences that the languages have a lot of baggage, right? You assume a lot of things in languages, and how do you reconcile those differences in your language? Because you're bringing a lot of things from a different culture into a non-native language of that land, and then you are also trying to get, I think I said not for Indians, but you are going beyond Indian audience on Indians readers, and when you are writing for them, how do you reconcile those things?
So I'm actually going to make a plug here to Avatanji, which is like, because of Indic Academy, I was able to take this workshop with Otis, who's this wonderful creative writing teacher who came from Stanford, and he's just brilliant. And Indic Academy actually sponsored like a number of us to take classes with him, and actually every single Sunday he hosts this open house for 2 hours where you can send in a writing sample, he'll critique it, and then you discuss it. And I can't emphasize, actually, like, this is graduate level creative writing things, which if you were to go to a program, you'd spend tens of thousands of dollars. But because of Indic Academy, this is actually free to anyone who just takes the Indic pledge. So I wanted to make that plug. But this is something I work a lot on. It's hard because Rajiv Malhotra has this concept of Sanskrit non-translatables, which are there are certain words like like dharma or karma that you can't easily translate into English. On the other hand, we also want to communicate and connect with people, so we don't want to just silo ourselves. So I do think, and for me, like, English is the language. I can speak Bengali, but the Bengali I can speak is just about daily life. Like, I can't like write a novel in Bengali, and same with Hindi. So for me, like, I have to write in English. One thing that Otis has taught me, which has been really helpful, is that it's good to put those Sanskrit words out there. But then, you don't also just want like a glossary where you just have like, here's a definition and things like that. But how do you say, like, how can you put that word in there, but then also explain it in a way that'll make sense to others? And that's something I think we need to do. And the belief is that whenever we write or any of the arts, there's something in it that's unique, but then there's also something in it that's universal. And if you truly believe that Sanatana Dharma is Sanatana Dharma, then language isn't just language by itself will never be able to capture everything, but it can kind of indicate something. And so you find the language, and English is never going to be as good at it as the Indic languages are. But I do believe you can still indicate that things, and because human beings are human beings, it will resonate with them. And even if the words are imperfect, the meaning will come through. So it's actually a challenge for us, but it's actually good for my own sadhana and my own swadhyaya, which is like, how do I explain something like dharma in English? But then that's a good way. This is like people say, when you teach others or when you try to explain something to others, you understand it better yourself. So this is something we have to do. And what's really interesting is there's a movement also in literature in the US where they want to promote people of color and diverse voices and things like that. And Hindus have been lagging like way behind. So there's this this Percy Jackson, which many people may be familiar with. So the author of Percy Jackson has actually made it a commitment that he wants to share stories of like mythology, and we can get into like why mythology isn't the right word, but in any case of different cultures. So there's like Chinese traditions and Egyptian and others, and there have been some in India, but we haven't done enough of that. And so part of this idea, like heritage shouldn't just be looking backward, but also looking forward. So how do we represent ourselves, not just in the past and what happened in the Mahabharata, but also what's going on now and in the future, and what's the Hindu version of Harry Potter? And again, like Deepa said, let's not be afraid to have fun. So not everything has to be very serious and religious and things like that. You can just have something that's fun, but then that also carries a lot of import to it.
I know Deepa wants to chime in, but I'm the moderator, so I'm going to use my authority here. I just wanted to make a quick anecdote. In my JNU graduate school, head of the department was Professor Meenakshi Mukherjee, a very well-known English professor. She was also from Patna. And I know in one of the classes, somebody told, during the conversation said, "Oh, I speak Bengali." And she got really, really upset. And she says, "Bengali is the calm, language is Bangla." So I just wanted to make that point here. Okay, Deepaji, to you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, Aditi has fantastic ideas about, all of these subjects. So I just wanted to add a few more because as part of Hindu Heritage Month, I think, these points have to be reiterated by many, many experiences. So I have three things to add to, or at least, reinforce what Aditi mentioned. First is bindi, tilak, bhasma, whatever you wear, that is, it has to be, all of us have to lead that. And what I wanted to say is I grew up similar to Aditi. I just couldn't give up when I came here. I grew up in India, of course. Aditi is even better in the sense that she grew up here and she still continues. But I just want to put a plug for whoever is watching this video, that right from my first job, I went in with a bindi and I've had success and everything. I got into top business schools and I went into management consulting. Similar to Aditi, I was my first job after my MBA was with McKinsey & Company, which is another very, kind of top tier, buttoned up kind of culture. And I was working with multiple clients, did not matter. It was just part of me. Maybe the first time they looked at, hey, what is this lady wearing? But after that, nobody cares. And since then, I've never had and it just now I feel very confident with it. It doesn't even okay, this is who I am, accept me as I am, right? So that's number one. So I encourage, I don't think, in this country, like Aditi said, there are very few people who will misjudge you. People do accept you at face value and they then go beyond you to what you offer. Right. The second, which I wanted to add is, Aditi, and by the way, Avatanji, Indic Academy, this fantastic conference is going on around the polytheism, right? And I've caught parts of it in the middle of, whenever I could spare time from work, I caught a part of it. One thing I remembered is we are the culture that will not judge other polytheists. So we, there were many people who spoke about their cultures. I was curious to learn about them. Hindus will never say, what? That's weird. We'll never say that because we are the only culture that believes they have every right and they have come from an ancient culture. They have conceptualized their own deities. They have conceptualized some practices. They live in unison with the universe, with the nature. I'm not going to judge them. So what I wanted to recall is several years back, maybe 8-10 years back, there was this article in the Patreon, the online magazine, and it was a druid from Europe who was either he was writing or he was commenting, I don't recall. And he actually said, and I still remember it in spite of the thousands of words, posts we have read. He said, if I have to survive, I think there's some kind of a Celtic or some kind of a pagan culture from Europe. And he said, if we have to survive, Hinduism has to survive. Because if you guys are going down, we are kind of the umbrella under which a lot of these other traditions can survive. And this is also a point I made to the children in the workshop is our survival is critical for the diversity of thought in the world. So it's very, very important for us to survive. Yes. So I'm glad about Indica's work in that respect as well. So I just wanted to add those two points to what Aditi said.
My little point, my son and daughter, my son usually puts a Rakhi, right? So like this one. So this is from Raksha Bandhan. So I keep that till it kind of is falling apart, right? So in probably 10 months of the year, you would see something on my hand. And this has been going on forever. I mean, I've worked in companies. So I always go, people ask me sometimes, hey, what is this, And then that gives me a chance to explain to them. And they never mind. They ask my son, like he goes to school, they ask him, hey, what's this? Or why are you sporting a tilak sometimes? Or maybe, he did a puja previous day and the tilak mark is still there, and they'll ask him like, what is this? And then he is good enough to explain, like, we were doing a puja and this is what we do. And I said, that's good enough, for your age to explain to them that this is what we do and this is our culture and this is how we celebrate and what we do. That's good enough for his age. So that's pretty much what I would say. If there are people who are listening and have young children, are apprehensive about showing off some of the things that we have. With that, I think we'll go to Nesergy next. Nesergy, I mean, we are all kind of way older than you, and you're still in the college. So I would say I would ask what are the positive influences that you have in your life, Hindu experiences that you can share with us, maybe other audiences listening to young kids who are going to college, they are listening to this and they might get inspired by that.
So I mean, I am just really enjoying hearing about these stories from Deepaji and Aditi about being these women in the workplace who are successful and were proud enough to wear your bindi throughout that journey. And for me, I wasn't always like that. I'm just recently getting into wearing the bindi all the time and wearing cultural clothes and all of, showing my Hindu heritage outwardly as well. Like I said, many of Hindu Americans, especially the youth, are closeted. So yeah, and Shanti, when you said that about having to explain, that is sometimes a burden on students and having to, maybe they don't know themselves the answer to that. And right. Recently we just had World Bindi Day as part of Hindu Heritage Month on October 7th. And some of the efforts there were from Hindu Students Council, we provided like pamphlets and things like that for students to hold the table at their campus, pass out bindis to people, and then those and people have generally good intentions when they ask those questions. But now with something like this where we provide the information and spread that knowledge, those students can pass on that knowledge to others themselves in those personal connections that they have with students on campus or with people that they meet in general. And then at the same time, be empowered and inspired by people like Deepaji and Aditi to be those women in the workplace who continue to wear the bindi themselves. So yeah, I just want to say that was very inspiring. But, on the topic of what, from Hindu heritage that it has brought a positive influence in my life, along with these values that I have learned from my parents, like you, Deepaji said, to own up to your heritage, don't be shy of who you are. And like you said, Diwali is coming up. So should I go to school, or, maybe I can put let the professor know and tell him that I'll make up the class, but today is a really important day for me and my family. And if I were to push it off to the weekend, then who knows, in a couple of years, that could become a tradition. And that's another thing we'll lose now. Instead of doing it on the days that it is meant to be historically and spiritually, we are now moving it to another day and losing those meanings there. So that really ties to the idea of what I'm saying in the practices that have been passed down from my parents and the values that I've learned. For me, Hindu heritage is all about those values that pass on from generation to generation. It's not only the beliefs. Of course, for example, during Diwali, we'll be there. My mother will tell us the story of why Diwali is there, because Sri Ram returned to Ayodhya, and it was a moment of reunion. But along with those beliefs in why we're doing that, I think the how is really important. So for me, my specific practices of Diwali would be, like you said, waking up really early in the morning. If we have the ability to do firecrackers, then of course we would. But also it's about calling up our relatives and checking in with them, making sure that everybody, what did you do for Diwali today? It's just like a simple conversation, connecting with everyone, and valuing that communal relationship and rejoicing about the celebration itself and just being happy during that time. So yeah, I just wanted to say that apart from the beliefs and the knowledge and the wisdom that there is in Hindu heritage, as youth, the way that we can contribute is continuing to be those practitioners and physically representing Hindu heritage, so that we can continue on the legacy in that way. And along the way, we can add to it by gaining that wisdom.
Right. Right. I quickly want to add something with not Nyseri was saying. So in Gujarat, we used to have this tradition of after Diwali, which is the New Year, the next day, you pretty much go to your relative's friend's house. You go them, they serve you like all the nashta, right? All the snacks and everything. And you pretty much do that for 5 to 10 days. Every day, obviously those 5 days after Diwali is holiday. So you pretty much have the entire day you go to people's houses. That tradition has completely died off, pretty much that I know of. It has completely died off. So what and now we are in different parts of the world. I can't really go to unannounced to somebody's house, and practically was unannounced. I mean, that was the keyword, like unannounced. You don't just call them up and say, I'm coming. No, you just go unannounced. So now I've made a practice of calling my family members, everyone, friends, families, maybe do a Zoom call or maybe do a WhatsApp call or something, just to put everybody together in one frame and we'll just talk. And sometimes we end up talking for 2 hours. So that's something that others can probably emulate or try it out next time.
Yeah, I've heard of similar things happening in Gujarat when my parents were celebrating Diwali there, and I would always ask, if you guys are spending the whole week visiting everybody, then what happens, when somebody visits you, and you're not there? So that was the question, because if everybody's outside, then who is at home?
Usually they would come back. They would either come back later on, because the visit stations go up to the day of Diwali, right? So they go up to like 12. So sometimes if they don't find you, you just come back later on, or just call, or something like that. So but they found ways. They found ways around that, in those days.
And I think from my experience, from what I know and I have seen, our house when I was growing up was never locked, ever. There was always somebody there. So I don't know. Okay, I think Ram has a question.
Yeah, just on the question of my corporate experience, I think I concur with most of the opinions that were said. I don't think we have had any issues sporting my Vibhuti or whatnot. When I travel, I don't usually carry it, but if I go out anywhere, that I go to a restaurant, or when I was going to my local clients here in Chicago, I would sport a Vibhuti and never had any issues. If at all, it will help raise awareness, in my opinion, so that people come to know what it actually means. When I did my grad school here in Chicago back in '92, I used to work for a lab, and I was doing my part-time job, and I used to sport my Vibhuti here. And one day, one person, he came. People used to visit all these computer labs because they never had a laptop or computer back then. So they would go to the computer lab, print their resumes, get ready for job fair, job interviews and all. One person came and told me, actually, I think you have a dust or something. I said, no, it's not dust. It's my third eye. I use it for spiritual needs. I told him, and then he acknowledged that fact. He immediately said sorry to me. That was the only incident, actually. But, in general, US is quite open, quite tolerant. I think it helped a lot of people. I think doing it will help actually raise awareness, actually. That's one. But on the same note, Aditi, right? So, Nesergy actually grew up recently, but you probably did a couple of decades ago. I will put it respectfully. How was your experience growing up in school? Not in the corporate world. It was before. It must have been in the 80s or perhaps in the 90s. If you could throw in your experience, Aditi, that would be great.
It's very dangerous to talk about a woman's age. But I'll say, so yeah, there are two aspects to it. One is the social side of it. It was difficult in school, and I didn't realize, I didn't really realize at the time I was going through it that the things I thought, if people were like teasing me or bullying me, like there's something like wrong with me, like it was personal. I never really thought about, is it because I'm a different race? Is it because I look different? Is it because of my religion or whatever? I remember that I was in high school. There are two things I remember from high school. One is I was in a class on world history, and there was like, you could choose something to write a paper on. And I wrote a paper. I wanted to write a paper on the Mahabharata. So like I read it, and there's like the Rajagopalacharya's like thin volume of the. So like I wrote something, and I'd seen like the TV serials, and I remember this teacher saying, "Oh no, but what you said is wrong." And I said, "No, I don't think it's wrong. Like this is something I've heard it from my parents, my grandparents. I've read this book." And he's like, "No, I've read 3 books about Hinduism, and what you're saying is, you're just wrong." And I just didn't know how to react. One is I didn't have the knowledge to react, and the second thing is we're taught, rightfully so, to be respectful of our teachers. I couldn't imagine really like challenging my teacher. I never took it back to my parents. I never went to the principal. Again, like we're taught to kind of be docile in a way. So that was one thing. Another thing that I remember is there was like an American history teacher, and he brought in like a newspaper clipping, and the newspaper clipping was about some like pilot from America who like landed in some remote village in India. And when he landed, like the villagers like garlanded the pilot and things like that. And my teacher was like, "Oh, isn't this so funny? Like these primitive people, they were like worshiping this person, like they thought he was God." And he didn't understand, like when you garland someone, it's not like that you're worshiping them as a deva. You're just honoring them, or you're welcoming them. And I felt so like humiliated in that moment, but like I couldn't even recognize it. I didn't have like the frameworks of recognizing it. And I remember that same teacher, like there was a Korean kid in my class, and like he would make fun of like, "Oh, you brought like kimchi for lunch, you're gonna like stink up the room," or like whatever, like these like little things which at that time it didn't register on me, but they make a big difference, so these little things. So that was there. But then what I also remember is like there was just something I was craving. So we talk about like wearing the bindi, and like why do I wear the bindi? It's not just because it's like an identity. It's like I feel naked without the bindi. Like for that moment when I put it on, like I'm like, inside I'm divine, and this is just reminding me of that. And it's like there's a certain power that comes from it. When I do my sadhana in the morning, I know if I do my sadhana in the morning, I know like I can have a really bad day, things can go like really badly, but I'll have known like I've done my best, like I've brought my best self. There's like a strength and a nishta that comes from that. And as a child, I didn't really know how to do puja. I didn't know how to, like I wasn't in a religious family. And I remember I was just thinking about this. My practice, I didn't even know the word sadhana, is I would just light an agarbatti, light a stick of incense, and I had like a picture of Thakur, so Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, and Sharda Devi. It was just, for Bengalis, they're very important. And I had that, and I would light an incense, and I would just read for 15 minutes. I would read Swami Vivekananda's books, and that's all I knew how to do. And then the other thing I did, there was a book, I really like loved Krishna, but I couldn't find any books about Krishna. I didn't know how to, pursue Krishna. And then there was a book in English that had like his 108 names, and I typed them out and I printed them. And and in those days it was hard to find things online, and I would just read those names. And like a few years ago, I found that document. And as I read it, I actually started crying, because even though I didn't know anything, and this is what I want to say, we really twist ourselves up, and we have to learn the perfect way of doing puja. If you go on Facebook, everything's the debate. You're doing this wrong, or you're doing that wrong. And the thing is, like, I knew nothing, but that little thing, that 15 minutes that I did, even though like it was nothing, I was just reading a book, I was like lighting a stick of incense, but it did something. Like it led me to so many other things. And what I really want to say is like Ishvara and Parvati, it's so compassionate. It's not asking you to become something else. It meets you where you are. So you just put a little bit of that sincerity and just try something for 15 minutes a day. And all these things open up. And it's actually a very selfish thing to do because you get so much strength from it. Like I don't get, even when my father died, I didn't get depressed. I was very sad and I felt that sadness and I felt that pain. But the Shraddha that comes and that feeling that, Ishvara is always with me. And I'm not like a great sadhaka or something, but this is just like the greatness and the compassion and the daya of like our entire tradition. So it's, when we don't do it, we're depriving ourselves of something as well. So anyway, but because it was kind of hard for me to find these things or discover these things as a child, like it's something I always just wanted to work on to make it accessible to others.
Fascinating, very fascinating, Aditi. So we are coming to the end of our segments. Unfortunately, it's as enlightening and as fascinating this conversation is, we have to call it quits sometimes. But before we do that, I want to ask each of you if you have a question for each other. No pressure. If you have any questions directly for them.
I'll ask Nyseri if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, please.
So, Nyseri, I think what Hindu Students Council has been doing over the last few years that I have known them, maybe they've been around, for a while, but I've known your work only for the last 2-3 years, let's say. And it's really heartening to see the next generation take ownership of the Hindu community issues, spread awareness and give a sense of identity, a sense of courage to the younger generation to at least claim that they are Hindu.
Right.
What do you have within your team? Have you discussed any plans on how to get more, what's the situation with Hindu Students Council in terms of, are you seeing more and more children joining you? Are you seeing a sense of identity and they want to belong to the Hindu Students Council? If kids are not joining, what can you do? What do you plan to do to draw more Hindu children into the fold so that we have a much more vibrant generation coming out of colleges, right? Like my dream is, because of the work that you're doing, the next generation that graduates from college and comes out and into the world, into the US, they are much more confident. They are not hesitant about their Hindu identity. They're able to talk to it. They're able to counter all these attacks that keep coming out, like Avatanji mentioned earlier. What are your ideas and your challenges that you foresee as part of the Hindu Students Council going forward?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's an ongoing discussion at Hindu Students Council and how we can continue to accommodate and come up with new ways to engage with Hindu students. In terms of challenges, or I would say actually in terms of things that entice students to join Hindu students or become more involved. For one, it's the idea of belonging. And I think this is a universal concept in which we always want to feel, no matter which background we're from or which religion we're from, we want to make sure that we belong to something and somewhere. So in that sense, I know that a lot of students that come to us, we have that missing community in their life, or they're not able to fully express who they are or be part of a group of like-minded individuals. So for that reason, a lot of students join Hindu Students Council and maybe start a chapter on campus, or if not that, just join the community and start speaking to us and becomes part of the family. Another reason I see students getting more involved is that because of the social media, boom, there's a lot of issues around the world that have been coming to light about the oppression of Hindus, persecution, the Hinduphobia that is, blatantly seen in respectable places like academia, where you would hope to be learning about the authentic version of different fields, but instead you're seeing this false information being spread. So when people realize that, when Hindu students realize that, okay, this is not right, that kind of encourages them to, take ownership of being Hindu themselves. And like you said, since they're, taking from that culture and what they gain, they're trying to contribute back themselves and see where they can take part in those issues. And in order to continue, getting more Hindu students involved, I think one of the main ways is continuing with our initiatives. Like, for example, Hindu Heritage Month. The month of October is a very auspicious month for Hindus because we have Navratri, Karva Chauth, Vijayadashmi, Dashera, like all these opportunities to just celebrate being Hindu. So our students on campus, what they do is they hold those like really big Garbas with all these students coming together, dressing up, just having fun, like you said. That is a great way of just enticing other students to be part of that, fun. And even non-Hindus end up joining at that point, right? So that is one thing with what our students do on campus. And then nationally, we have some initiatives like tomorrow, actually, we're going to be releasing a interview that we did with Sinu Josephji, and she taught us about menstrual practices in Hinduism. And so it's just like that, where we see those, role models like you guys having all of this information to share with us, and we bring you back into our community to share it with the students. And even if it's like for 1 hour, that information that you leave with us, we take it in, and then with that, we incorporate it as students into our lifestyle. And it's not just about being engineers and doctors as Hindus now, it's also about, as those professionals, how can we continue with our religion and practices and make it like one holistic lifestyle in which everything is one and just correlates with each other and makes us Hindu Americans.
Thank you. That was wonderfully explained. Anybody else has any questions for the panelists?
I haven't asked Deepaji, when is your book coming out, or is it any on the horizon anywhere close by? Close,
I think. Yeah, I wish I had the kind of commitment that Aditi is showing, but yeah, I hope to publish it. I hope to get the manuscript out in a couple of months.
What about you, Aditi ji? What about your book?
So there's one on Shiva and Sati that'll come out in the spring. Then I'm working on another one, which is like more contemporary, and so that I'm still working on, and one on Kunti, and I'm also working on something nonfiction. So we'll see. But don't ask me when it's coming.
Okay.
I would love to get a copy for my daughter. She loves reading contemporary fiction and contemporary stuff, and with Krishna and all that. She would love it. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah. Anybody else has any question for the panelist? Aditi ji, Nesergy, do you want to ask anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I had a question, and anybody can take it up. I think one thing that Deepaji mentioned at the very beginning was how the youth nowadays is really about not just following our traditions blindly, but it's also that we have this curiosity in learning what is behind a lot of what we do. And to some extent, I can see where they're coming from. But there's also great value in the oral traditions and just having that relationship one-on-one about passing those traditions. But in those times when you have experienced that, when the younger generation comes to you and asks these questions, and has it ever been that maybe you yourself were not able to explain, or if you were to explain, what approach did you take, and what was the response at that time?
Who wants to take it? Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
And I was just gonna say, I don't have an example of where I, was able to tell someone else. I was just thinking in my own experience, that there is this emphasis on, we have to like learn things, like the science behind things and things like that. And I think it's good, but sometimes you just learn it sometimes there are only things you see when you've gone through certain, like from a sadhana perspective or things like that. So for example, in the US, it's a big thing, to blow out candles on your birthday. And then many years ago, I heard, you should never blow out a candle. And like I heard and I kind of like intellectually understood it. And I was like, okay. But it was only after some years of sadhana that like intuitively, like just the idea of seeing a fire and extinguishing it, it just feels wrong. And so some of it is like some things are intellectual, but some things come through experience. And then I do think it's important, there's to encourage people to have, like, there's nothing wrong in having doubt or having, because that's part of the journey. It's like in Buddhism, they say like the greater the doubt, the greater the realization. And it says that doubt has come from like a place of sincerity. So if you feel something that's sincere, then you should encourage everyone, not just youth, but like everyone to let that be there and then pursue that. Because I had certain things, and like when I read the text and like the status of women, and can a woman get moksha, or do you have to be like reborn as a man to get moksha? And these were things that like it really mattered a lot to me. And if someone just told me, oh, just don't think about it, like that wouldn't have worked. But then I kind of got to my own answer. So I think the best thing we can do is, when people have these questions and it comes from a sincere place, to offer up resources, offer up thoughts, but then let them have that, have that journey, because something really beautiful can come from that too.
I have an anecdote from my family as well, that growing up, I don't know if it's it happens in other areas as well, but in Bihar, every time you went out on a trip or a journey, you had dahi and chini, just a little. My nani, we learned it from nani, and we have been doing it ever since. Even in US, I've been now here since 1994. Every time we go out, we do it. We got married. We now have a almost 20-year-old child. And my mother-in-law, who is not Indian, she has been watching me for a long time doing it. So last year, she came up to me and she said, now I figured out why you do this. I said, sure. Because she asked me, I said, I had no explanation. I said, I just saw my nani doing it, and that's what I've been doing it. I have no logic, no reasoning for that. And I think it's something to do with religious tradition. And she said, I think the reason you do it, because when you go out for a journey, you want to preserve the good bacteria in your gut by doing with the good bacteria, so that it doesn't affect you when you're on a journey right away. I said, makes sense to me, but I don't know what the real reason was, but it makes sense to me. Anyway, sorry, Deepaji, you were gonna say something.
Yeah, so it's nice that I have two teenagers at home. One just went to college, and I have another 12-year-old. And I also interact with a lot of, as part of my kind of volunteering, I interact with a lot of children of many ages. So here's what, and these are things like Aditi said, the answers don't come to you right away. Even as a parent, it doesn't mean you have the answers. That is why I feel what has helped me is this continuous svadhyaya for the last 10, 15 years, like reading every day and listening to a lot of acharyas. So to your point, right? And there are situations where we don't have a specific answer to, and there are multiple examples. You gave an example, Aditi gave an example. There are two things which I kind of tell my children. First is what we are able to explain through words are only what can be measured. Like the Western model is very, it's very materialistic in a way. It's if only it can be measured by some instrument, it is supposed to be exist, right? And I'm from a management consulting, so I do, it's all about metrics. Everything has to be measurable, smart goals and all of that. However, the whole realm of sadhana is about things that are subtler than what can be measured. It cannot be measured. They cannot be measured, number one. And even if they can be measured, it takes time for it to show its impact, right? So 10 years back, when I kind of started being more serious, I didn't have anything. Now my mind is mostly calm. I'm full of love for people. Nothing bothers me. I'm able to do my work with much more focus and passion. I mean, so many things, right? They don't, and of course, love for Bhagwan, which takes time to develop. It's easy to say. You just have to keep doing it every day. You do something, and then, even if you open your eyes, it's Bhagwan. These things don't happen overnight, and you have to submit to the process. And so what I tell my children when they have questions like this is, number one, if I have an answer, like, something like what Avatanji said, to have an answer, I tell them, because they have a, bent of mind where they want answers. If I don't have an answer, I said, even if you don't have an answer, this has been tried and tested for millennia now, centuries. So since there are 80% of things where we have answers, we know that they work. There are 20% of the things I don't know, I don't know the reason for it, but I have that Shraddha because the 80% has started bearing fruit, right? So it's kind of those explanations you have, and say, some of it, try it out. As long as you're not harming yourself and harming everybody, try it out. And then if you seeing the results, you will do it. If you don't, you will change to something else, right? And thankfully, with Hinduism, there's nothing mandated on you saying you got to do this 1 hour puja. There's nothing like that. It doesn't work for me, I do something else, right? So it's flexible, but at the same time, the flexibility should not give you an excuse to not do anything. The flexibility is meant for you to find what is suitable for you. It's not meant to say, oh, okay, Hinduism is flexible, I don't need to do anything. I don't need to go to the temple, I don't need to do puja, I don't need. That's not the point. The point is that the flexibility should make you think, what are the things that are helping me develop? Even from the Gita, for example, I'm a Gita student. I try, and if I can follow the Gita, that's good enough in our life, I think. But, in the Gita, so many values are given, right? Like, the Pragyan Lakshana, the 13th chapter has values, 18th chapter has values. You can't follow everything, but taking one and giving attention to that itself is a great sadhana. So the point I tell my children is, some of these are subtle. They have been tested and tried for ages. Go with the Shraddha, and you will definitely, Shraddhavan Labhate Jnanam, Gita itself says. And another place it says, if you keep having doubts, nothing will work for you. Samshayatma Vinashyati. You keep having this, I don't believe that, I don't believe this, I don't believe this, it's your loss, right? So that has helped to some extent. But I think I truly believe that's easy to say, as I can say and hope that they will follow. But frankly, the large number of children will need answers. So I think parents do have to be somewhat aware, should be able to have open, honest conversation and not force anything on them. It's just not going to work and it'll backfire. And I'm hearing a lot from other parents about it. That's why I think we got to, step up both our swadhyaya, our sadhana, role modeling, and having these discussions at home.
Fascinating. Thank you. I wish we could go on and on and on for a long time, but we have to come to an end. But before we do, I would like to ask each one of you if you could say in a couple of sentences, summarize or closing remarks with a perspective looking forward about Hindu heritage. Since you are on my screen, Deepaji, I'll go with you.
It's been a great opportunity to discuss this topic. So thank you, Indic Academy, Avatanji, Nishanji, and Ram to organize this, and fantastic inputs from Aditi and Nyseri as well. And I really learned a lot. So parting thoughts, I think let's use this Hindu Heritage Month as an opportunity to, kind of assess ourselves first, right? Before we, like I said, before we start blaming, the professor or druggers or whoever it is, do we have the answers, right? What she says is what she says. Do I know for sure that, our warriors gave up their lives for independence? Do we know for sure that what Rama or the relationship between Sri Ram and Sita was? Do we know? So I think it starts with us. And like I said earlier, I would reiterate the 3 S's. So Swadhyaya, Sadhana, and Sangatana. Many of us, organically, we do these 3 things. I'm not at all saying, I know many of my friends do many of these in some way or the other. But I think where we are as a civilization, as a culture, we need to be deliberate about it. We need to deliberately know what is my Swadhyaya plan for the year. I'm going to reread the Mahabharata and understand truly what it says. Or I'm going to read the Gita or whatever it is, right? So what is your Swadhyaya plan? You may have a sadhana plan. What is it? And are you including your children as part of it? Are you developing yourself as part of it? Sometimes it's together with I also face this. Sometimes I get my children in. Sometimes I tell them, no, today is my day. I need to have my own, time with Bhagavan. What is your plan? And definitely that includes, as Nishanji, everybody said, how am I going to celebrate my festivals, right? How am I going to add more meaning to them? How am I going to extract the most value from them? So that is a sadhana part. And thirdly, what is my Sangatana plan? How are you going to contribute to the community through, you can either use the Panchamahayagna model that Aditi talked about, or you can find, locally, my temple, am I volunteering? Any organization, am I helping them? Am I contributing to them in some form or fashion? I think putting a deliberate thought into these 3 S's, what am I going to do with them? I think it will give you, and personally, Swami Chinmayananda, who I personally follow, in one of his books, he says, write down, what are you going to do? Write down every day, where you struggle. What is your plan? What books are you going to read? And in fact, he says Gita, and there's actually he says 3 pages of this book, 5 pages of this book, and 5 Gita verses, and the same stories, because the stories really inspire us. So early on, I used to do that. Now I think the habit is set in. So having a deliberate plan for these 3 that you can do with your family, sometimes alone, sometimes with the family, will not only help you, but will help them to imbibe, the children to imbibe going forward. And I think there's a lot we can do outside, but like I said earlier, it starts with the family. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Very nice.
Aditi ji,
Very nice.
Next up, Aditi ji, can you quickly summarize a few things? Yes.
So I want to end on an optimistic note. So I was thinking, a few months ago, I was actually in the Maldives, and what was really interesting is, the first inhabitants who would come to the Maldives had sailed from India, hundreds of years ago. So you think about how much, bravery and adventurous and the spirit that our ancestors had, and they came there, they built temples. And then if you go to, I've been to Java and, Prambanan Temple, and then I haven't been to Cambodia, but all these places that they've gone and they established a culture and a civilization. And we're kind of at this opportunity, we have this opportunity now for those of us who've come to the West. What are we going to do to contribute, to this country? So as an American and as a Hindu. And that's actually a very exciting thing. It's a great opportunity. It's also a great responsibility. I think even when you think they're like Buddhists who went from India, they went to, Tibet and China. And then, there's always a story that inspires me of the 6th patriarch in China, he was an illiterate person. But then he was able to suddenly get this realization, but the significance of him was, he took Buddhism, which had come from India, and he was able to adapt it to China, to the Chinese mind, the Chinese way of life and being. And then, Chan Buddhism prospered there. So there is great prospects for Hindu Dharma in America. It's going to be different, and we have to be creative. We have to be original. We have to go back to first principles. But I think it's an exciting time actually to be a Hindu in, anywhere in the world. And there are good opportunities for us, and we have to make the most of it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
How, Nesergy, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, and I would just like to say thank you for Indic Academy for having me, and Avtanji, Nishanji, and Ramsundarji for hosting this event. And through this, I got to know Aditi and Deepaji and got to learn so much. And it really is just talking about your, who you are, your cultures and stuff like that. It's fun in itself. So that is a testament to Hindu Heritage Month. And yes, we emphasize the collective and all the different varieties, but in those varieties, those are the individual experiences that I think that matter the most. And I think that we all need to identify, realize those individual meanings of Hindu heritage that we hold and really stick to them and find out ways that we can continue. Of course, during, with all the different ways the world is changing, there's a lot of accommodations that we have to make. But along with those accommodations, I think there's a lot of things that we can do to enrich those experiences that we have right now. Like I said, for example, with the, maybe this year, even though it is a practice for many Hindus during Diwali to, go to work or go to school, I might change it up and actually spend time with my family. And that is my way of like enriching my experience of Diwali. So it's, like you said, it's really just about changing all those theoretical concepts and everything and making it into an experience. So along with learning about Hindu heritage, now we are also becoming part of it and actually contributing it apart from this month, as it will end tomorrow.
Thank you. Spoken like a dadima. And that's an appreciation. No. So yes, thank you very much, everybody. Appreciated your input, discussion. It was very enriching. Hopefully all those who participated or will get to watch on our YouTube channel later on will be enriched by this conversation. I also want to thank Ram and Nishant and my India team, our India team in Hyderabad, for all this support, going back and forth on flyers and this and that. It's not an easy job, and I want to make sure that they get our appreciation. Everybody, and we will connect again. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Shubharatri. Bye.
Namaste.
Okay.
Happy Deepavali.
Yes,
Happy Deepavali.
Happy Diwali.
Diwali.
Okay. All right, Nishant.
All right, I will. Yeah, I think Srinivas is busy somewhere, so we'll just turn off.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Talk to you later.
All right, talk to you. Bye.